This show is produced by the Hartman Media Company. For more information and links to all our great podcasts, visit hartmanmedia.com.
Speakers, publishers, consultants, coaches, and info marketers unite. The Speaking of Wealth Show is your roadmap to success and significance. Learn the latest tools, technologies, and tactics to get more bookings, sell more products, and attract more clients. If you're looking to increase your direct response sales, create a big-time personal brand, and become the go-to guru, the Speaking of Wealth Show is for you. Here's your host, Jason Hartman.
Hey, it's my pleasure to welcome Joe Calloway. He is the best-selling author of many books. He's got about 8 to his name now, I think. I really like his book, Becoming a Category of One, How Extraordinary Companies Transcend Commodity and Defy Competition. He's also the author of Be the Best at What Matters Most, the only strategy you will ever need. Joe, welcome. How you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me, Jason.
Good to have you on. Good to have you on. You know, we live in a world where there are so many people and so many marketing messages coming at us that nobody can keep up anymore. And everything, you know, with technology, everything just sort of drops to the bottom rung of commoditization.
Yes.
How do we stay out of the commodity trap? Because if you look at the broad spectrum of business, Joe, any company that has become a commodity, that's like the worst thing that can happen. Now, granted, if they're a big, giant multinational, they can churn out their commodity at high speed and very efficiently. But for most of us, we don't want to become a commodity, do we?
No. If you're going to succeed as a commodity, that means you've got to be able to win on price. Mm-hmm. You've got to be able to be the lowest priced and still be able to make money and make a profit. And Walmart can do that, but I can't, and I have no desire to. Here's my take on it, Jason. You know, most people say, well, not most people, but a lot of people, and maybe it is most people, I think they get caught in a trap. They say, well, all we've got to do is be different. As long as we're different, then we're good. Well, look, everybody could wear a funny hat to work, and that would make you different. Mm-hmm. But the only different that matters is if you're better. And I agree, you do have to set yourself apart and be different in that way. But to me, the ultimate being different and the ultimate way to stand out is to deliver more value. I tell you, I am firmly in the camp of it always comes back to who delivers the greatest value. And of course, the customer is the one that determines what value means to them. Mm-hmm. But to me, it's ultimately about value.
Okay. When you say value, I mean, give us some examples of that with various businesses, you know, like people who might be listening are thinking, well, I really work hard. I take good care of my customers. I treat them with courtesy and respect. But so do my competitors. You know?
Yeah, that's where you've got to find some part of the value proposition as defined by your customers where you win, where you stand out. A classic example that so many people can relate to is Southwest Airlines. And Southwest wins with a combination of, now, when they first started out, their goal was to be the lowest priced carrier on every route that they served.
And by the way, you know, I'm a big fan of Southwest. I've studied their business for many years. Herb Kelleher recently passed. And I agree. What's really interesting about that, though, is Southwest is not cheap. I mean, if you book a long time in advance, they're pretty cheap. But man, if you're going 2 weeks out, Southwest is pricey. You can fly way cheaper on lousy American Airlines, which is the worst on the planet.
Well, listen, that's the point I was about to make. Right. They started out being the lowest price carrier, but now on over half their routes, they're not. And so what they've done is combine a combination of good price, and it is generally a value price. And as you say, the further out you can book it, the better. But they've also combined that with a unique approach to how they hire and the way their employees interact with people, which is generally, they do this wild, amazing thing called being friendly. with people. And they've combined that with a very high level of efficiency, which is the being able to turn the plane around in 20 minutes. And so with them, it's a unique bundling of value. Now, there's a great story years ago on one of their long routes. And this was back when all the airlines were serving meals, even in coach, on a long route. And somebody in marketing said to Kelleher, look, on for example, our Nashville to Seattle flight, people are getting hungry and they want more than snacks. They want meals. And Herb said, well, will that help us keep our price down? And she said, no. And he said, well, sorry, we're not going to do it. So you pick and choose what value aspect you're going to win on, but then you have to execute and you have to win on it. And again, I come back to, it's funny. There are people that say, I have a great product, a great service, a great price, but people aren't buying my stuff. What's the problem? The problem is the customers don't think you have a great product or a great service because they're the only ones that get to vote.
Right. Okay. All right. So it's sort of interesting to study big companies and their success. Now, every big company started as a small company, including Southwest. But not many people listening can relate to running an airline, right? It's interesting. But what does that mean to so-and-so's small real estate company on the corner? I had this problem. I'll tell you, just personal experience. I used to own a traditional real estate company in Irvine, California. And I was just battling it out with bigger companies, more resources, more money to throw around, more marketing, more everything than I had. It was very hard, because the consumer doesn't know. They don't really know the difference. Talk about a commoditized industry. Real estate, realtors, they suffer that all the time. Now, thankfully, I got out of the commodity trap and I'm in a different kind of business in real estate now. But what's their thing? They're all going to say, I give great service. And, the consumer doesn't believe it. We've all heard that. Everybody says that, right? What do?
Here's the thing, going back to the first of your question of what can a very small company, and I am, by the way, a one-person company. I had some employees a few years back, but now it's just me.
Right.
So I've got as small a company as anybody listening, I guarantee you. Let me give you one principle and 2 or 3 examples on that. Let's look at Amazon, Apple, and Google. You should do exactly what those 3 companies are doing in one area. And, well, what area am I talking about? All right, those of you that are Amazon customers, and I would wager that's everybody listening, how easy is Amazon to do business with? How easy does Amazon make it to do business? Well, incredibly easy. Now let's move to Apple. When I ask Apple customers to give me a word or a phrase to describe Apple's products, they will generally say, along with other things, they'll say they're easy to use. Okay, what about Google? The whole principle of Google's business is to make the internet easier to use. We could keep going. We could talk about a disruptive company like Uber. What did Uber do? They made it easier to catch a ride. Now, here's my point. If you, with your 1-person or 2-person or 5-person business, can be known in the marketplace as the easiest to do business with, that is solid gold. And everybody listening, me included, you too, Jason, we can all look at our businesses and find ways that we can make what we do easier to understand, easier to buy, easier to access. So there's one idea right there that's available to anybody. I don't care how big you are, how small you are, or what business you're in.
Something interesting. I just here's a gimme. Here's an easy one for you. I find so many small businesses make it hard to pay them.
Oh, gosh.
I'm like, don't you want to make it easy for your customers to pay you? They only take credit cards over the phone, and nobody wants to give out their credit card numbers anymore, including me, I want to swipe it in a machine, or I want to put it in a secure website. I don't want to tell anybody a credit card number because I've been a victim of identity theft way too many times. And so that's my policy. I don't give anyone my credit card number. I'll type it in, I'll swipe it in, but I'm not giving it to you, right?
To that point, it's interesting. Just a couple of weeks ago, I switched and I do a lot of coaching and consulting services. And on my website, you can now pay using any credit card through PayPal.
Yeah, they don't, a lot of them don't accept PayPal. They don't have a Square or a Stripe account. These are just really easy to set up nowadays. It's not complicated to set these little merchant accounts up. It's just quite an easy thing. And every business, you need to make it easy to pay you. I mean, folks.
You really do.
Yeah, right. There's one for sure. But, okay, good. So take us through some of the rest of the book, if you would, and just some of the other important parts. You've got a lot of chapters here and a lot of sub-chapters.
You know what? If I can I jump books to the other one that you mentioned?
Yeah, absolutely.
Be the best of what matters most. And I'll tell you why. Yeah. I was having this conversation with a coaching client of mine this morning, and we were talking about how he and the people in his very small business, he's actually located in London, England, but how they could be more effective. And the thing we talked about was they need to do a better job at working on really high return activities. In other words, everybody was busy all day long and they were doing a good job on what they were working on, but they weren't working on the most important stuff. Mm-hmm. The things that would really create the greatest payoff for their business, they were kind of almost falling by the wayside. And so we went through doing a little mental inventory of, wait a minute, what are the 3 or 4 things that if we focus on those things all day long, every day, and make them the centerpiece of what we spend our time on, then we'll be fine. We'll be working on high return activities. And that, I think, is just an absolute essential piece of the puzzle that a lot of people miss. And when you get them to truly think about it and look at the way they spend their day, they'll do that, slap themselves on the forehead and go, you're right. I'm not spending enough time on this thing over here that I know is the most important thing for me to be working on. So that's one thing right there from becoming a category of one. Well, I'll tell you the most popular chapter that people bring up is about getting close to the customer and knowing the customer better than your competition knows the customer. I've said for a long time, if I can know and understand the customer better than anybody else, I'll probably win, because then you know not only what to sell the customer, but how to sell it to them. There's a couple of ideas right there. Work on what matters most and make an effort to truly understand your customer and what makes them tick.
Joe, so what else do you want people to know about either of the books or your work more broadly, but especially these 2 books?
There's a thread that runs through, Jason, it runs through just about all of my books. And I think it's so important. And it's this idea, when I'm working with a group, I'll ask a question. And I love to ask it when I'm working with a senior leadership group of a company. I'll say, how many of you frequently have this thought? Raise your hand if you have it. And the thought is, I think I'm making this way more complicated than it needs to be. And every hand in the room goes up. And I think I'm I have a heightened awareness of that because I know that I'm guilty of it myself. We tend to overthink darn near everything and make things way more complicated than they need to be. A friend of mine, his favorite saying, he actually ended up writing a book with this title. And the title of his book is Worth Doing Wrong, meaning if it's worth doing, it's worth doing wrong. And that means if you think about it and wait until you know you're going to get it perfect, you'll never do it. So do it, stop thinking about it, do it wrong, and then adjust. And I'm a huge fan of the power of simplifying. Steve Jobs of Apple once said.
Yeah, I love what he said. I know what you're going to say.
Yeah, he says, if you can make things simple, you can move mountains. Yeah. And I absolutely believe that. And if all of us, if everybody listening, and me included, if we would simplify the way we think about our business, and then going back to making it easy, simplify it for the customer, I tell you, the payoff on that is huge.
Yeah, no, I agree. I thought you were going to say the Steve Jobs quote is that the hard part is to make it simple.
Oh, yeah, that's
And you know, that's true. It's easy to overcomplicate things. And in today's world, people are craving simplicity. You know, they just can't deal with everything coming at them. It's just overloaded every corner nowadays. So if you can make it simpler.
Along that same line, another idea that I heard that oh my gosh, I love this idea so much, which is you're not finished when you've added everything that you can add. You're finished when you've taken away everything that you can take away. I love that idea, and you are so right. The market loves simplicity. I go back to the Uber example. Uber made it easier to get a ride. I mean, what a concept. What a genius concept.
Yeah, right. Yeah, definitely. Joe, just what else in general do you want people to know, though? You know, you talked about the thread that goes through your work. You've got like 3 rules about commoditization and not being a commodity. Do you want to share those with people?
Well, are you talking about the 3 customer rules?
Yeah.
Yeah, the 3 customer rules. Gosh, you're going to have to remind me if I forget them. But I mentioned them a second ago in general. One is know the customer better than anybody else, get closer to the customer than anybody else, and emotionally connect with the customer. And that last one, emotionally connect, is to the whole idea of customer experience, which is a huge part of your brand. And when I say brand, I mean, you've got a brand, I've got a brand, everybody has a brand. The interesting thing about brand is I don't get to define my brand. My customers define my brand. If you were to say to one of my customers, what's it like to work with Joe Calloway? Whatever they say next, that in the real world is my brand. And so this whole notion of making an emotional connection and creating an experience of doing business, listen, that can be a huge tiebreaker. There are people that will pay a higher price, and they know they're paying a higher price, maybe for a very, very similar, in terms of quality, service or product. But they say, you know, the fact is, I just like working with Jason. I just like Jason. I like his people, and I'm willing to pay a higher price for that.
Usually the reason people will do that is because they have a sense of security about it. You know, the retailers and the service companies that will take returns, that they won't hassle people about returns, that they'll go the extra mile to make sure the customer is satisfied. They're always going to be the winners because they have what is called pricing power. So, you know, you talked about Apple earlier. You know, I think these big tech companies are just disgustingly unethical. I mean, I just, you know, there's been so many lapses in ethics between Google and Facebook and Twitter and the censorship problem. And it just goes on. It's just really scary. It really is. But that's another rabbit hole. But, you know, of the big giant tech companies, Apple seems to really be one of the more ethical ones, at least in my eyes. You know, they're not perfect either. But you know what you do know is you're going to pay a fortune. You're going to pay a lot. But you know, if there's a problem, they're going to take care of it, and that's usually the case. You know.
Yeah, you've hit on something that I think is so incredibly important, which is to have a company that people say, you know, I just don't have to worry about anything when I do business with that company. It goes back to the trust factor that you mentioned, which is I trust that everything will be great, will be like it was supposed to be. And further, I trust that if it's not, they'll take care of it, and there will be not one speck of hassle about taking care of it. And, you know, all this stuff starts to tie together. That goes back then to making it easy to do business. There's these core things that the marketplace, that you and I as customers value, and whoever wins on those ultimately wins. But I'm telling you, it's not buzzers and bells. People used to talk all the time about wow factor. And I always said, listen, the greatest wow factor out there is if a customer says, wow, these guys get it right every single time. You want a wow factor, there's a wow factor.
Sure. Good stuff. Give out your website and tell people where they can find you.
Yeah, it's easy. It's just my name. It's joecalloway.com, and Calloway is spelled Calloway. The blog's on there. The books are on there. Everything about my business is on there. I'd love for everybody to come take a look. It's a pretty cool blog. I'm kind of proud of the blog. There's some good articles on there. So I invite people to come take a look.
Good stuff. Joe, thanks for joining us.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
Thank you so much for listening. Please be sure to subscribe so that you don't miss any episodes. Be sure to check out the show's specific website and our general website, hartmanmedia.com, for appropriate disclaimers and terms of service. Remember that guest opinions are their own, and if you require specific legal or tax advice or advice in any other specialized area, please consult an appropriate professional. And we also very much appreciate you reviewing the show. Please go to iTunes or Stitcher Radio or whatever platform you're using and write a review for the show. We would very much appreciate that. And be sure to make it official and subscribe so you do not miss any episodes. We look forward to seeing you on the next episode.